We are in the final day of the encounter, the international encounter of representatives of Casino de Ogawa 2012 in Valencia, Spain. And people had the chance to study in the past few days a lot about Heiho and Kyoden. Both Kyoden and Heiho are structures which belong to Chuden stage. Chuden stage is what is studied, is the time frame between Sensei and Shidoshi. In Chuden we have three main compositions. In Chuden one studies the basic Seitei Gata particular to this stage, which is very particular. You know, when someone see one doing Seitei Gata of Chuden stage, he might easily take a look and say, well, this is Chuden. Furthermore, the student will learn a lot about Heiho. Heiho, as you know, Hei from soldier, Ho from method. So the method of the soldier, or methods which a soldier could apply during war. Heiho actually are methods which a particular master found that he could take his thoughts or his principles concerning some situation, some particular situation, and he realized that he could use those same principles or forms with many other scenarios, under many other situations, and also with many other weapons. Heiho is always somehow linked to the idea of deceiving your opponent, to leading the configuration or leading your enemy or enemies to a situation which you already know. For some study or for some sequence to be classified as Heiho, it is very important that the Tori knows before his action where he is supposed to go and how the final situation is supposed to be. So if I did something in free forms and I had the same result as a Heiho, one could not say this was a Heiho yet, but just a flow of forms of techniques. A Heiho, for a Heiho to happen, one must know before what is going to happen until the end. Now we have the Seitei Gata for today, we have the Heiho, and we have the Kyoden. This Kyo comes from the verb oshiru, or to teach, and then comes from tradition. So Kyoden are particular forms, shapes, even one could say methods within a form which a master supposedly created, and thus also supposedly no other student or master would know how it would be. It would be kind of a secret form which he would tell just to some few students. However, we must not make a confusion with Kyoden and Kuden. This ku comes from mouth, or kuchi, and then means tradition. This Kuden has a very different meaning. If we think that Kuden is a secret that a master would tell to one or just some few students, but not concerning a form, not concerning a technique, but a principle of it. Let's consider, for example, the principle of to drain the power of someone in Aikido Jutsu. So before doing any technique, any lock, any throw, or any kind of immobilization, and then his master would come and teach precisely to that student the principle of draining the power of the uke before applying or concluding the technique. And furthermore, if this was passed just to that student in a particular time, then you would have Kuden. So we cannot make a confusion of Kyoden and Kuden. So it's very important not to confuse Kyoden and Kuden. Kyoden are forms, and these forms would be supposedly created by a particular master, and so he would teach to just some students. However, those are forms, and it would be conceived or understood that because that master created it, no other master would know it, or no other student would also know it, and so it will become a set of movements, a set of sequences which only those people would know. One could not confuse it with Kuden, as we were saying, because Kuden, this ku from Gucci, or mouth, and then tradition, has a very different meaning. What Kuden brings to us is the idea that a master would pass to one or just some few students a secret of an art, or even say a technique. However, not as a form, not as a shape, but yet as a principle to be applied to every technique. For example, let's consider in Aikido-jutsu, let's suppose that nobody at that time would know the principle of draining the whole power of the uke before applying or concluding a lock and immobilization or a technique of Aikido-jutsu. And so let's also suppose that this master would teach just to that student these principles to be applied to the whole Aikido-jutsu stuff. So this could be seen as Kuden. Many masters and researchers also consider, very interestingly, the translation for this Kuden, mouth, and tradition as to whisper just very close or just by the ear of a student. So brings us the idea of a secret teaching, which is not the same as in Kyoden. Although Kyoden, as we saw, belongs to the Chuden stage, and of course not everybody would have access to that until he got to that graduation. Those are still just forms and just situations which a master at a particular time conceived and thought that those would be particular effective forms. And of course, the deeper we get into an art, the more precise and more branches of knowledge we can find. We can also have one more slight confusion concerning graduations, stages, structures of teachings, and so on, because the sound, the phonetics of the Japanese terms could be very close. So we already took a look at Kyoden, Kuden, and now there is one more called Okuden. Okuden, again, in our school, it's the third stage. It's are the studies which one gets to when he reaches the graduation of Shidoshi. So our structure goes from Kohai, or from the person who got to a school by in first place, in first time, to Uchideshi. He is under the Shoden stage. Then he graduates to Sensei, where he goes to the Chuden stage. And so, from Sensei to Shidoshi, he goes through the whole Chuden, and from Shidoshi on, so he is under Okuden stage. So we have Kyoden, Kuden, and Okuden as three different things. So giving an example of what we have studied under Kyoden, let's see one particular case. In this case, this Kyoden is called Battougumo no Kyoden. This Baku comes, actually means to stop, to restrain, and Gumo from cloud. So what we see is a particular situation, a scenario in which two persons are very close to each other, side by side, and all from a sudden he draws and pierces. Please show us. Okay. And this form, or this Kyoden, has some particular principles, as we'll see. So the whole sequence is like this. So from the perspective of this Kyoden, as he draws in Suihei Nuki, I will draw and step away from him, using what I could use the most quickly I could. So I'll set my Mai, and I will move, kind of sliding. Battougumo no Kyoden brings an idea of sliding, of clouds moving, because it's very fast. And what I could use here is the Mine, the base is lowered, and the Mai. So from here, he tries one more time, he sees this branch in my position, and he enters. And I once again slide very close to him and finish in Kesagiri. In this case, this particular Kyoden has 5 movements. We saw one, and let's see another one. He draws and cuts Kesagiri. And I step away from him. Then he cuts Kesagiri one more time. And I block his attack. And he comes for the final branch that he sees in my position. And I slide one more time and cut him. So, as we could see, Kyoden is a structure which has a particular number of sequences, and that brings us the idea that it was created by one particular master, and supposedly he only would know the scenario and what the techniques would, where those techniques would fit or their aims. Now it is customary that every Kyoden is performed both in Tachi and in Suari position. So under this same Battougumo no Kyoden, let's see other sequence which will be performed in Suari no Yuko. So first of all, he draws and cuts in Kesagiri, aiming a short mai, and he cuts me here, trying to create a situation which would be quite difficult for the other party to step away from him or to do some technique. So we can already see that during this performance, the idea of the master who created this Kyoden was to establish a pattern or a thought for precisely this scenario and this condition. So let's see. One more time. He draws and tries to cut me quickly, and I slide. Block and intercut.